This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Welcome to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, Sarah Blair, and I have my friend JJ Lendl joining me today.
Hey, folks.
Hey. How are you, JJ?
I'm doing well. How are you, Sarah?
Hanging in there. We're coming into the end of season 7. I can't believe it.
Amazing. Yes. Yeah. I think the last time that we spoke was it all the way back with Milagro, I believe. Which probably feels like literally years ago at this point.
Yeah, right? And yet so close and yet so far, right? Time is weird these days, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like the last year and a half has been like a decade, but then at the same time like 2 weeks. Yeah.
It's a journey. So today we are here to talk about the penultimate episode of season 7, Souhaite.
Oh,
have you
beautiful.
taken any?
Yeah.
Thank you. I took some French in high school.
I think when I think of this episode in my head, I just say Je souffle.
I think that works. That's
make it easy
the only
on
thing
myself.
I'm gonna call it from now on.
Yeah. Okay. That makes it like. I don't think anybody makes a souffle in the episode. There is a bit with a stove and an explosion, so maybe that's the souffle.
Flambe.
Souffle flambe. I guess that would be okay. So the alternate title, Je flambe.
So yes, this episode. Oh my goodness. See, this is why we love having you on the show, JJ.
Right, yes.
Endless entertainment.
With my poor language skills. Yeah, perfect for a podcast.
It's all good. Okay, so we're talking about Je Souhaite, and it originally aired on May 14th in the year 2000. That was a long time ago. Can you believe that these kids these days who were born in 2000 are of adult drinking age?
I know. Makes you feel like you have cobwebs hanging off of you. Yeah.
Right? Yes, and yet I still don't feel like I'm old enough to be this old.
Same. Yeah. We're all just little kids running around pretending.
Exactly.
Yeah. 21
So,
years.
I was getting ready to graduate high school when this aired.
Yeah. I was I guess I was in my freshman year of high school.
Yeah.
So you got me a little bit there. We won't do the math.
Ironically enough, this is the 21st episode of season 7.
Oh, yes.
And it's 21 years old. So
amazing. Perfect.
And it was written and directed by Vince Gilligan. And this was his directorial debut.
Oh, I don't know that I realized that. That's exciting.
Yeah.
It feels like a very Vince Gilligan episode.
It really does.
In a lot of ways. And and this episode, like, in a lot of ways, like, it's kind of the last Monster of the Week episode for the X-Files as it stood for many years, because the show just really changed after this one.
It really did. So, yeah. Big changes coming for the X-Files. And I think that's one of the reasons that I love and enjoy this episode so much is because it kind of is almost its own finale in a way, even though it's not quite the season finale for season 7.
Yeah.
It's kind of this almost, it's got that same feeling as Forehead Sweat, where it's like kind of a happy ending.
Yeah. If only the show could learn to like end seasons this way.
Right.
Rather than with, like cliffhangers. And can you imagine them ending a season that wasn't a mythology episode? It was just a monster of the week? No, it's not in the show's DNA.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But still, it would be enjoyable for those of us who like the lighter episodes, like I do.
Yeah, as do I. Yeah, to end a season with Mulder and Scully enjoying a drink on the couch would be
no angst. What is the X-Files without angst,
right?
JJ?
So the X-Files are still open, and like nobody's dead, and
they're watching Caddyshack and everything is happy. Spoiler alert.
Right. Like, why am I even coming back next season? Check in on these people. I'm sure this is what the writer's room was thinking during the run of the show. But it is real, it is kind of like they've been making the show now for 7 years, and, everybody on the show is, they've got it down. They know exactly what they're doing. To the point where this season, you can tell, and I'm sure you've talked about this in some of the other discussions, that they're kind of trying to mess with the formula a little bit to kind of just keep things on their toes. And it's certainly like the relationship between Mulder and Scully evolves a lot this season.
So much.
Yeah. And sometimes in really frustrating ways where it's like, as a viewer, you're like, did I miss an episode? Like, is there something happening here that I'm not privy to? Which I guess is the cross that all X-Files fans have to bear when it comes to
true.
the Mulder-Scully
relationship. All
relationship.
shipper fans have to bear, probably.
Right.
Let's just...
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I wouldn't consider myself like a hardcore shipper or anything like that. But, I just want people happy.
Yes, they deserve happiness. After all this time, after all they've been through, Mulder and Scully deserve their happiness.
Yes.
Just let them have
Absolutely. Leave Mulder and Scully alone.
But I say this, and as a writer, conflict is drama.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
You have to put obstacles in their way to make it interesting for the audience.
Right.
But those poor characters.
Well,
I feel bad for them.
Did you ever, this is like a completely different type of show, but I've been listening to a podcast about The Office, the actor who played Kevin put together, I think last year, which is an oral history of The Office. And so he basically interviewed everybody in the show. And it was really interesting to hear the showrunner on there, Greg Daniels, talk about the core relationship of that series, which was Jim and Pam, which, for the first couple of seasons, it was the typical kind of will they, won't they? There's this unrequited love. It's complicated. And it was interesting to hear his thoughts on that and think about the X-Files because, they got those characters together at the end of the third season. So pretty early in a show that ran for 9 years. And his thought was, if you do the will they, won't they, or if you have them get together and break up and get together and break up, the audience is going to get frustrated. And so he thought, I think the better thing to do is to get them together and then present the couple with challenges that they have to overcome together, as opposed to continuing pulling them apart.
Right.
Obviously, that's difficult if you're in a contract negotiation with one of the actors.
It makes things a little bit complicated.
Right.
Yeah. They did something similar with Castle, too.
The Nathan Fillion show.
Yeah. And that had a lot of... I've been talking about this a lot this season, but they do the same thing where it's presenting their conflict within the couple.
As opposed to, just pulling them apart all the time and,
Well, there's a little bit of that, too, because there was other drama with Castle.
There was, behind-the-scenes drama with Castle.
So much. Yeah. It was a lot.
They can't all get along like David and Jillian.
That's a loaded statement, but yeah.
Well, you're right about that, yeah.
Yeah. So, back to our genie.
I'm sorry,
No, this is why, we have our podcast, because it's fun to talk about these things.
Yeah, and it's just so, and like I said, it's all at play in this episode because this is really the last regular series episode where this relationship is at its kind of status quo because things are just so dramatic in seasons 8 and 9, And so this is kind of like the last, the calm before the storm of Requiem.
It totally is. Oh my gosh. That's exactly the best summary for this episode, I think. In this episode, our calm gets disrupted by this genie. Of all the things, the Janaya, all the things that could have come up in this episode, all the monsters. She's not totally a monster. I wouldn't call her a monster.
Yeah.
She's a magical being.
Yeah, supernatural apparition. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like one of those. It's like, I guess it was inevitable that they would do a genie episode. You know, after 7 years, you're just sort of like figuring out, like, okay, what haven't we done? What
you got to do something.
What well haven't we gone to?
I watched the commentary that Vince Gilligan did on the DVD, so we're going to talk about that. But before we get there, let's do our ratings.
Okay.
JJ, what would you score this episode out of 10?
I think that it's probably like, it's like a solid 7 is what I would say. I really like this episode. And, you know, the only reason why I wouldn't take it any higher than a 7 is because, I don't know, The X-Files has so many really fantastic episodes. And so, like, I stack it up next to an episode like Bad Blood or Humbug, and I don't think it's quite there for me. I mean, there's some great laughs in this episode, and, you know, I think that, as Vince Gilligan always does, he creates this really interesting tiny world within this bigger world of these, like, really dipshit brothers and, you know, this larger mythology. I love the stuff about, like, tracking the genie's history and, like, putting all of that together. And there's great stuff with Scully as she gets super excited about her finally being able to, like, okay, I'm seeing this thing that I can't explain, and I'm going to embrace it, and I'm going to bring other people in, and obviously that doesn't go super well. But I really do love the episode, and I think if anything, there is kind of like a bittersweetness to the episode for me. You know, just where it falls in the timeline of the show, and just knowing what comes next. I think that might actually, it colors the episode a little bit for me, so that it's not any higher. I'm curious what your rating is for this episode.
It's high. This is in my top 10.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I didn't mean to insult you with my 7 out of 10.
No.
I thought that was
totally fine.
Okay.
I was a little bit shocked, but that's fine. We all have our reasons. See, the thing is, though, like, I rate on watchability. Everybody knows this. Like, rewatchability, this is one I never miss. It's actually grown in my esteem over the years. Before, it was one that I didn't appreciate the way I do now, I think.
What do you think changed for you?
I think probably just maybe getting older
and,
like, appreciating, you know, those moments where, you know, things are good and you don't know, like, what's coming next.
That's okay, yeah.
Especially these days.
I mean, I've been thinking about that kind of concept a lot recently. And I think I've landed on, I think things felt less complicated then for a lot of people. Not for everybody. I think things were a lot worse for a lot of people back then. Things were a lot more complicated for people back then. I think that, you know, you carry a certain amount of privilege with you. And, like, I'm not a part of, you know, a marginalized community. And so, you know, you and I, we can kind of look back on this era with rose-colored glasses, and certainly from a fandom perspective, just from the X-Files, like, this is still, like, the golden era of the show.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to look at it from a TV landscape too, because, and I feel like I always say this when I come on here, is that X-Files is such a well-made show. For today, for then, and just, like, seeing all these people operating at the top of their game is, like, yeah, it's almost like it kind of brings out this nostalgia. But I've become very weary of nostalgia as I've gotten older. I really have. I think nostalgia is dangerous, and so I think your you know, sort of, like, watchability standard is a really good one. And yeah, I think this is a super watchable episode, and I really enjoyed revisiting this episode recently. Yeah, it's ironically for an episode that aired in 2000, it is very 90s.
Yeah. Plus, it's also fun to see Vince Gilligan at the beginning. He had already written a lot of stuff by this point, but seeing his directorial debut and then now knowing that we have Bad Blood, or not Bad Blood.
Breaking Bad Blood.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Breaking Bad Blood.
Better Call Blood.
So, yeah, we have Breaking Bad, and there are some fun things. He's got his themes that he...
Like most writers,
Yeah.
someone once told me was that, most writers they have one story that they really want to tell, but they keep telling it again and again in different ways with different levels of success. And so, yeah, I feel like, you can see a lot of Breaking Bad DNA in his X-Files episode. And this particularly, you have these guys that are living in a trailer and, they are not living like their best lives. And I think there's a lot of that going through the DNA of Walter White, a lot of the characters in his later shows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. With all of that, I would probably rate it as a high 8, close to 9.
Okay.
For me.
8.99, repeating.
12 times. The IMDb score is 8.5 with 3,000 votes at the time of this recording. And it shares an 8.5 with X-Cops. The only other higher rated episode of the season is Requiem. It's got an 8.7. And most of the episodes here in this season land between like an 8 and an 8.4.
Okay. See, that
There's
makes
a
sense.
lot of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see. Now you got me thinking about the rest of the season. And
Yeah.
because I think that this is a better episode than X-Cops. And that's another Vince Gilligan episode, right? Because I think that's one that he lobbied to have made for a while. Yeah, it was written by Vince Gilligan.
Yeah.
He didn't direct it, as you pointed out, this directorial debut. I like X-Cops, but I feel like a lot of it relies on sort of the gimmick, the cops gimmick.
It does. So what would you rate X-Cops then? If
I don't know. Listen, I'll bump up my rating for this episode to a 7.5, and we'll give X-Cops a 7. How's that?
that would make it higher than Fight Club at least.
That is true. I think just about every episode this season would probably be higher than Fight Club.
Except First Person Shooter.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. There's some delightful episodes this season. I really like the Goldberg variation. I'm a big fan of Hungry. I really like that episode. I think that's an underappreciated episode of the show. Another episode that tries to flip, one of the stalwart, parts of the series on its head by taking the perspective of the monster of the week, which I thought was kind of cool. And then, like Hollywood AD. Okay, so we should be talking about this episode during the podcast. But it is interesting, the season 7 has its own flavor. It really does.
We're coming into the end of the season. It's okay to reflect a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for giving me permission to do that. I feel better about it.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, this is another, when I go back to watch the show, which I don't do nearly as often as I would like, just because of my life. It's this is another episode which is it feels very Los Angeles. Like all the, these season 6 and 7 episodes to me kind of stand out compared to like the Vancouver aesthetic, which is interesting because I don't know, that felt like such a big part of the show for me, especially when I was first watching, and you just kind of have there is a big shift in the look of the show, and this is another, because there's a lot of exterior shots, it's mostly daylight, so it's just kind of like bright, and it's far from running through the forests of Canada.
I'll tell you what, let's dig into the episode.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit about that. It's relevant.
Okay, it's relevant. I'm on the edge of my seat.
All right, let's go for it. Okay, so you're just talking about the Vancouver aesthetic. So I watched the commentary. Have you seen the commentary?
I'm sure that I have. I went through my DVDs long ago and just poured over all the special features.
So one of the things Vince Gilligan mentioned, and it's in a later scene, but he said it was actually raining on one of the days, and apparently, I did not know this, you can't see rain on screen unless it's backlit.
Yeah.
There's plenty of times on the X-Files in Vancouver when it's raining, but you can't really see it on screen.
Okay. You have to like
So
look at
that's
the
why.
characters and
Yeah.
see if you can see the droplets on them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go.
When you listen to the commentaries, folks.
Bringing it around.
Yeah. That's cool.
There's a lot of fun things in the commentary that I will drop in, but let's start with Anson and let's continue with the aesthetic of the LA landscape with this
Yes.
storage facility that we open with, and the boss on his little golf cart, and
Yes. The opening is, I mean, it's sort of like the typical X-Files opening where you're meeting these characters quickly and there's something strange happening. But, boy, the humor in this opening is as black as coal. Like, it is some really dark humor happening, like, even for X-Files standards at the top of this episode.
is it dark for Vince Gilligan humor, though? Because I would say probably not. I think it's right on par.
I think this is Vince Gilligan really kind of, again, you've got this guy who's been writing for the show now for a number of years, and he's taking on more responsibilities later on in the series. So I feel like he's kind of off his chain a little bit here, because he's directing the episode. So I feel like he's going as dark as maybe his instincts allow him to. And again, it's fun to know that this guy went on to have such an illustrious television career and as a showrunner, and just see a lot of the seeds of his own style being worked on through the X-Files. Because it's definitely there. Yeah, he can get a lot darker than this.
Exactly. But we appreciate this because it's really interesting. I just love how we meet this character of the Janaya, and she's in a carpet instead of a lamp.
Yeah.
Turning those preconceived tropes on their heads, I guess.
Yeah.
That's always fun. He actually mentioned in the commentary that he had this idea for a story beginning in a storage unit. And he wanted something to be found in a storage unit. And it was originally, he said maybe it was like a robot or an android or something. And people would open up the storage unit and find this really old robot thing.
Okay.
And so then he took this idea to John Scheiben, and they helped him sort of like work it into what it turned out as.
Into not a robot.
The Janaya.
Right.
Yeah. So Frank Spotnitz, John Scheiben, helped him a little bit to sort of turn this idea into what it became, which is interesting because it takes a village to write a story, I think. You can't do it by yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's the beauty of the X-Files, is that all these amazing minds kind of came together and sort of helped each other to develop these episodes. And they had to do it at such a quick pace that I don't know how any of them accomplished it, but they did, and I'm glad they did. But
well, that's where you get episodes like Fight Club. That's
some of it comes out in the wash and some of it doesn't.
That's right. But they all have their own watchability, and so it just depends on how you watch them.
Yeah, exactly. I do like Fight Club. I think it's I like it more than most people.
I'm not surprised. It's there's some charm to that episode, and yeah. But for the opening of this, it is this really cool kind of mysterious opening in that way, and I just keep thinking about, like, this came out in 2000, and you and I'm sure we both grew up with Aladdin as, like, the ultimate genie story, and there's just like a lot of elements of Aladdin in this episode, because as we get to learn more about Jenn, I mean, she's like basically Jafar, like she's like a mellower Jafar, asks for the power of a genie and ends up, being doomed to be a genie. It's fun that way. And then, she's not in a lamp, but she's in this carpet, which also makes me think of Aladdin, but
Yep.
they didn't have the budget to make the carpet fly, which is probably better. But I don't know how they would have afforded a robot. That would have been
I know. Well, they also didn't have the budget to put Anson, when he turns invisible, Vince wanted him to have his clothes on and, like, be the invisible man.
Oh, like
but
the
they
Claude
didn't have
Rains.
the budget for that, right?
Yeah.
So clearly they spent like most of their budget on the end scene where LA is shut down and nobody is in the street.
Where they have to shut down the streets and have him running
Surprisingly
around.
enough. I think he said that cost like $50,000 or something to do that shot.
I bet they would just do it on green screen now.
Right? Yeah. It's crazy. So that was one of the things that actually came out and kind of made the episode better, I think, because he has to be invisible and you just see him moving around.
Yeah, it's really clever, like, from a directorial standpoint, because you're just sort of, like, following the action of this guy that you can't see.
It was a lot more fun.
Yeah, and it's very much like showing and not telling, which I love. Like, if you can tell the story with a camera, not with dialogue, that's
absolutely
for me, that works the best. And this episode does that a lot.
It really does. Speaking of showing, not telling.
Yeah.
When Mulder is talking to Jay Gilmore, who is the boss, Scully comes in. And
this is quite some time after the opening.
Yeah. We skip forward in time a little bit, and Scully comes into the office and reacts to...
This poor guy. Yeah, so, right before the credits, we end the teaser with a reveal of his mouthless face, right? After he, after Anson makes this sort of offhand wish that his boss would shut up. And then we see, Scully and us audience members are horrified to see how this guy had to have numerous surgeries to try to reconstruct his mouth out of just this, lack of opening in his face. This is what I mean by, like, dark humor. It's ghastly.
Yes.
But it's played for laughs.
Yeah, can you imagine? He's gonna have a lot of surgeries for that because, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a hack job. I felt so bad for him.
I know. And you're like, Mulder, maybe you could have wished that this guy could get his mouth back.
Right?
Yeah, but I guess he wasn't thinking about that. I guess they see a lot of horrible things in their job, and so they become somewhat desensitized to them.
Yeah.
But who knows how that wish would have been construed by the genie. Yeah.
It's true. She has her own special way of interpreting things, doesn't she?
Right. The mouth might not be in the right place. Who knows?
You didn't specify where you wanted your mouth.
Exactly. Now we're writing the sequel episode.
Yeah. Okay, so they go to investigate because he wants justice. He says, I demand justice.
Yes.
Or tries to. Bless him. So they go to the Mark Twain trailer court in Missouri. This is where they live, is the Mark Twain trailer court. And I don't know if there's any specific special meaning why he chose that. Maybe he's just a Mark Twain fan. It's kind of a commentary on,
the everyman,
Yes. The everyman, the regular blue collar kind of people, I guess.
Yeah, right? that could
that
definitely...
he sort of focused on in his work.
Right. Yes. Gilligan is framing himself as a Mark Twain of the X-Files, of the turn of the 21st century. These characters are hysterical, and the actor who plays Anson's brother is one of that guys of the 90s.
He really is.
Will Sasso, who I know him from a ton of stuff, mostly, again, like sort of small comedic parts. But I believe he was also a regular on Mad TV for a number of years. Yeah, the sketch comedy show that some young people may not know existed. But, Saturday Night Live has been around for, 40 years at this point now. But in the 90s, some folks got together and said, hey, let's take on SNL. Let's make a sketch comedy show that will air in the same time slot that is based on Mad Magazine.
And Vince actually wrote the character for him. So
that doesn't surprise me.
He had him in mind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mulder and Scully come to investigate. They think maybe they're IRS agents because of this giant boat
yes.
crammed into this trailer park.
Yes. And we find that this is the result of a second wish that, again, not a lot of thought was put into and was completely rendered useless when she conjures the boat in the trailer park nowhere near water. And what's he has another complaint about it? He's got to pay taxes on it?
Yes.
Okay.
He thinks that Mulder and Scully are the IRS agents coming to ask him about the taxes on this boat. Which makes me wonder, like, how long has he had this boat? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, because, like, I think that there is a long period of time between the opening and the rest of the episode, just because this guy has clearly had a lot of work done on his face. We're 2 wishes in, and when we find him, he's agonizing over what to do next. And Jenn, who we're finding is completely over everything, sitting there with these guys.
Can you blame her after dealing with Nixon and Mussolini?
Of course, no, not at all. Yeah.
No.
And now these guys, and so the agents are going to their home, and they're trying to get some answers here. How do they track? Did they get his name from the boss? Does the boss think that he's somehow involved in this because of their exchange?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Because he told him to shut up and then he lost his mouth. It can't be a coincidence, JJ.
Yes, of course not. These things don't just happen.
I don't know how he did it, but he did it. I know it's him.
Right.
Which I feel like is giving him a lot of credit.
Yeah, right.
And I love how Leslie's like, oh, that's not our boat. I'm just holding it for someone. It's not our...
My side gig as a, boat retention specialist.
But it makes me wonder what Anson was thinking. He's like, well, you gave me a boat, but no water to put it in. But what was he thinking? Like, they're in Missouri. Where's the water in Missouri?
And
I
think...
Are they going to be on the river? I don't know.
I think
the Lake of the Ozarks is near Missouri, right? You're going to put that big old boat on the Lake of the Ozarks? I don't know.
I think that that's about as much thinking as Anson does for most of the decisions of his life.
That's true.
And this is where Mulder gets his first brief look at Jenn. Is this right? As he steps into the...
She's there.
Yeah. And we see him see her, and we see Mulder's gears start moving a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Because she's wearing sunglasses inside a trailer.
She looks way too cool to be hanging out with these guys. She's wearing sunglasses during the daytime.
Then he starts talking about weird chemicals, and they're trying to explain it. And Leslie's covering for his brother, obviously, as he does. Did it ever say which one? Was Anson the older brother? I feel like yes.
It seems like that's their relationship.
Dynamic, right?
Honestly, they may have said, and I'm forgetting. But
yeah.
I could see it either way. I could see Will Sasso, the Leslie character, being older, but being like sort of this gentle giant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sure they mentioned it at some point. Let us know, folks. Who's the older brother?
Yeah. They go to check out the storage unit. Obviously, that's the next stop because this is where the crime. Is it a crime? Do they think it's a crime or just a weird occurrence?
The incident.
Yeah. But they've got to investigate about this thing that happened. So they go naturally to the storage unit and they find a lot of expensive stuff.
Yeah.
So Scully's first theory, logically, is, well, maybe they stole something, right? Because this is expensive. But they've also got this boat.
Right. Absolutely. And also, none of this explains how this guy's mouth disappeared.
Right.
Which is what
Mulder says that. Scully's like, this is a crime of theft, and he's like, but what about this dude's mouth?
Yeah,
that doesn't explain anything. He sees the woman in the picture. They recognize her as the woman from the trailer that they just saw.
Right. Does he also see Does he see the rug in the?
I think so.
Yeah, and I think that again, it's one of these great episodes where we're tracking it, and Scully's like, here's an explanation, and Mulder's like quietly in the corner looking at the thing that we know is the explanation.
Right, yes.
And we as an audience are watching Mulder put it together in this way where it's like, how could he possibly be putting this together with the little information that he has? The only way that we know what happened is because we got to see the opening.
Right.
And poor Scully, who, is incredibly smart and is just trying to find some rational explanation, is completely...
She's doing her best.
Yeah, she's doing her best. Yeah. But she was right. They did take something, but it was someone.
They did.
Yeah. So Mulder's putting these pieces together as they're going through.
And I do want to mention the remote control. Because...
Okay.
I mean, Vince Gilligan said he was very surprised that Standards and Practices let them use that remote control. I don't know. It's one of those Spencer gifts,
right?
That are just ridiculous. Yeah, anyways.
But I do want to say, like, especially like where they live and all this stuff, especially I'm always fascinated. Shows like the X-Files, which don't really have a lot of standing sets. They've got the office at the FBI. You have Skinner's office and the conference room, but for the most part, they're creating these worlds from scratch every episode. And, this is such a great example of them creating this little microcosm for one episode of this world. And you see everything in this space, and it just paints such a great picture of these people and their everyday lives. The set designers, the decorators, they all did such a great job of creating these little worlds in every episode, which is not, every show does not demand that kind of constant creativity, but the X-Files did, episode after episode.
Absolutely. And the inside of the trailer was on a soundstage on Fox Studios, but the outside was a location.
Okay, it was shot on location.
Yes. So one of the commentary bits mentioned how this trailer was built in the soundstage. And then when you cut back and forth, when Mulder shows up, it's location, soundstage, location, soundstage.
And you have to match all those shots, yeah.
Yes, magic of editing.
Right.
And
the poor continuity person on set, which is like, okay, well, David, you make sure that you enter this way because this is how you were entering in the other shot. You want to make sure they cut together and, make sure that your hair, all the costume and hair people, and it's like, you gotta make sure that there's continuity between all these shots. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
Yes. And the blocking of this scene too, because sometimes they're sitting down, sometimes they're crossing the line of sight. So you've got to keep all that straight as a director. And he said that was very challenging for him for the first time.
Yeah.
He was very nervous about getting it right because that, you don't want them to be looking in the wrong direction.
Because then you can't edit it. And
right.
I know that they would have to shoot on a really limited schedule to get these episodes out. And you can't go back and
right.
redo it because you're already moving on to the next production block. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
Exactly. And even the last scene with Mulder and Scully in Mulder's apartment, they needed that set for the next episode.
Right.
So he's like, I had 100 people over here with Kim Manners just tapping his foot waiting on me while I did
waiting
the
to get in to shoot the next one.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
That's how it was going on at this point in the series.
That's great.
We've got the Janaya, who is sitting here trying to help Anson figure out his last wish, because she just wants to go back to her carpet and just take a nap.
Get away from these guys, yeah.
And he is taking his time about this last wish, because he wants to get it right.
And this is so funny, because she is just, I don't know if we've mentioned, but Leslie, his brother, is paralyzed, does not have the use of his leg. And so she just keeps alluding, say, hey, you sure you don't know what you might want to do?
No clue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny.
And it's not totally clear if she is allowed to. It makes me feel like she's not allowed to suggest wishes.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
I don't think she's allowed to say it specifically.
But it's interesting, too.
She gets close a couple times.
Yeah, she does. And it's almost like, if he would have wished for it, would that have gone okay? Probably not, right? But, again, her attitude is almost like, buddy, if you wish for this is the thing to do. It's not gonna, I'm not gonna give him, cat legs.
But do you think that maybe her style of granting wishes is due to the fact that she is so annoyed by everybody and just wants to punish them for their greed?
I think that you're probably on to something there, because this individual is obviously incredibly jaded. They've been around for a long time, and they seem to always be matched with nincompoops or sociopaths, or totalitarian dictators. And even Mulder, and not to skip ahead too much, but his idea for a wish, again, just falls into this sort of really grandiose, world-changing concept. And I think from her perspective, she's been around so long, she's like, that's dumb. Like, this is not the way to go about this. All of you mere humans, you have such small conceptions of the world when you think about it in these grand ways, and when you think that you can just make people do whatever you want them to do and shape it in this way. And so, yeah, I 100%, I think that a lot of it does have to do with how jaded and frankly, like, tired she is of dealing with these people.
Yeah. And also, I feel like probably if they had actually chosen to give him back the use of his legs and his full faculties, I think she would have just done it and straight up, like,
yeah, because maybe, like, I'm sure we could workshop some ways that could, go wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It would not have been a very interesting episode, though.
No, absolutely not.
No.
Let's try to think of ways that she could turn that wish on its head. So,
well, cat legs for one, like
cat legs. Okay.
Extra legs for arms.
That's true. Yeah, legs for arms. It could be like baby legs. Like, well, I had to make the legs how they were when they were, when they were younger. So he just has like adult torso and then baby bottom.
Robot legs.
Robot leg. Hey, Vince, there's your robot.
Turn his bottom half into the robot.
There you go. Bringing it back. Saving that plot idea. Yeah, right. Yeah. That could, okay. This is good.
Yeah.
So when they launch the X-Files What If animated series, where they go into the episodes and do alternate versions.
X-Files Albuquerque.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Right. No, I wasn't even thinking of that.
Well, we've got the show now, so let's go.
Can we? I want to talk about that too, but I don't want to derail us too much because I'm like, I think about that and I'm like, well, isn't that what the X-Files was anyway? Wasn't it these two people in the basement of the FBI dealing with cases that no one else cared about?
I know, right?
Yeah, it's weird to think about, like, okay, and now let's take that and let's make it even more. It's almost like, there's this misunderstanding of the premise of the original show. It's like, these weren't some hotshot investigators that were, like, legendary among their colleagues. These were misfits.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, you've got Dreamland, which I feel like maybe that crew could make a good subject for X-Files Albuquerque. I feel like those guys in Dreamland could maybe potentially...
Oh, that could be interesting. Yeah. So you mean like the Men in Black kind of? Okay, that could be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not the concept I heard. I heard, I heard like it's these junior agents who are dealing with like X-Files that even the X-Files don't want to investigate. Like, what the Y-Files? I don't know. I don't know where the letter system goes.
But there was also that show called Ghosted. It was a very silly version of the X-Files.
Okay.
But fortunately, luckily with the X-Files, they gave it more time. Because I think, like, the first couple of seasons, maybe the X-Files were kind of like that.
Well, it's tough because shows now, network shows don't get a lot of time to breathe here. If you're not a hit right off the bat.
Because they've got so much to compete with.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I don't know. I the concept of bringing the X-Files back as an animated show is an interesting one. The concept of really leaning into the comedic aspects of it is an interesting one. Anyway, you can cut all that out, but
it's all good. No worries. This is where we get the invisibility wish.
Yes.
He finally decides on invisibility as his wish. Invisibility at will. Important.
Visibility
He is specific about,
yes.
I want to turn invisible at will. So he finally at least got that far.
And this is like, yeah, and this is a wish that was kind of well done, and if it was in someone else's hands, if it was someone else's will, it might have went better. But, you know, they can't see you when you're crossing the street, man.
The truck they did with a mirror.
Okay.
That was another expensive shot because they busted up the truck. It was like it was going very, very fast. I don't know why they felt like they needed to make it go fast.
I don't know.
In this shot because you don't see a crash.
Yeah.
But apparently this truck was driving extremely fast to break through a giant mirror.
Okay.
And they filmed the mirror with the truck heading towards it. So, and just, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they felt
filmmaking.
like, yeah, they know what they're doing. Yeah.
Yep.
Remind me, because obviously they can't see a body,
Mm-hmm.
but this body ends up in the morgue.
The body apparently is tossed into the pathway.
Right.
And the guy's riding his
bike, and he bites it. Yes.
And he's like, the sound he makes, he's like, whoa. And just head over heels on the bike.
That's
and
great.
Goes flying.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they decide that it's a body.
Yeah.
There's an outline in the sand where he's pressing the sand down. So I would assume that it's in the shape of a human body, but they can't see it. So these guys come into the morgue, like rolling in the empty gurney.
Yeah.
They're just like, I don't know. And they just hand it to Scully, and she's like, what is going on?
And this is such a great scene. This is such a great Scully moment.
It's amazing. She does this so well.
Yes.
She's so happy about
giddy.
it.
And we don't get to see Scully like
No.
this. She's absolutely giddy. To a certain extent, again, like, thinking of this as sort of like the last regular season episode before the show takes this turn. This, like really hard mythology turn is how I would consider seasons 8 and 9. Because you do have plenty of Monster of the Week episodes, but there's a lot more mythology happening. And obviously, the lack of Mulder in most of the episodes to come, you can't ignore the larger story that's happening underneath. But this is like the moment, because it is kind of like this, oh my gosh, like, you know, the dog finally caught its own tail. Like, we finally have some evidence of an incredibly, like, extra supernatural, you know, occurrence here in the form of this invisible carcass.
Yes.
And Scully is
Yes.
elated. And,
She finally has her scientific evidence.
that's what I mean. Exactly. Yes, she has her evidence. And you could look back at, you know, there are certain episodes of the show where, I mean, as far back as, like, Tombs, where it's like, you know, we get this guy into custody and we see that there's some weird stuff going on biologically. Or the, trying to think of other Monster of the Week episodes.
Even Humbug with the twin
Yes, absolutely.
monster creature.
Right.
The mermaid. The Fiji mermaid.
Right.
That is, yeah.
The Fiji mermaid, yes. And then, like, you know, the, in Too Shy, they end up getting him and they find that he has this weird, like, glandular issue. But these are all monsters that are bound by these very rare genetic issues, which, again, it's like, it's super creepy, it's very strange, but we sort of understand the science around it. This small potatoes, exactly, right?
Yeah.
This is something that is literally magic. Like, there's no other explanation for it.
Exactly.
And it's in the palm of their hands at that moment.
Yeah.
But not for long.
Yeah. I just love how she plays this whole scene where she just plays this out. It's just so fun to watch her. She gets the powder to turn him, to try to, she's got, I've got this idea, and she just starts to sprinkle this powder on him, and she sees that it's working. She just gets so excited and happy.
Yes.
She's just giddy with delight at this, and it's so fun to watch.
Do you know how they accomplish this effect in the show?
Yes, he was painted with some makeup that he was allergic to. The actor was allergic to, and they didn't know what to do, but he cowboyed up. Vince says he cowboyed up.
There you go.
And got it done. So, that was a nice throwback to Ex-Cops. I love that he actually uses that phrase in his everyday vernacular.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, they come from somewhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he said that it was just the makeup and it had some kind of part of the pigment or something he was allergic to.
So what about the scene where she starts applying the powder? And
that was, I want to say, I know that it was blue screen.
Okay.
I don't know if they painted him blue, but I want to say maybe they did a cast of him.
Okay.
Perhaps,
that makes sense. I guess if you did like a blue cast and then you put the powder on, then it could create that effect.
Yeah, I feel like that's correct, but I don't 100% me on that.
All right.
It was. I know the blue screen was definitely a thing.
We won't print it in the papers.
I'm just not sure if it was him that was blue, or I don't know if they blued him,
or if he blued himself. Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly.
It's incredibly effective. However they did it. It's a really cool effect, and it's a low key effect that works really well. And I love this scene, and I did a commission somewhat recently of that scene of Scully covered in the remnants of the yellow powder on her face, looking like, it was for Cathy, yeah. So Cathy, Cathy, who I adore and who's such a great supporter of my work, and one of my patrons on Patreon, she had requested a pair of commissions from this episode. So one of Scully with the yellow powder, and one of Mulder singing the I Dream of Jeannie theme. So they were fun. And then we cut back to Will Sasso.
Yes, and Mulder.
And Mulder, yes. Right.
And this is where we get the I Dream of Jeannie.
Right. Because he's sort of confident in his theory here. And but then the other twist is that Leslie is now in possession of the genie. Yeah. Leslie gets wishes, and so again we're in the situation where the genie's sort of like, anything you want, anything at all, anything maybe right in front of your face that might. What does he come up with? What is
a golden wheelchair?
A golden wheelchair, yes. So again, you can see how she has become very, very tired of being in this place.
The best he can do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
The sweet guy.
And he tries to trick Mulder though. He tries to trick Mulder because Mulder asks him for the container that that controls the genie, the Deana. Right. And he hands him this little urn box.
Yes, which seemed like it could be, the lamp. But,
right.
Yeah.
Because Mulder thinks it is a lamp because that's what anyone would assume, probably.
Right.
He gives him this container, and Mulder takes it back to Scully, and he's like, judging by the way it smells, I would guess that it's probably where they keep their pods.
Right.
But
right.
I have this other theory where, let me talk about it. And so then they talk about the mystery woman, they called her. Yeah, he puts her face through the facial recognition with the Library of Congress because Quantico does not know who she is, but the Library of Congress does.
Because these are public photos that they find from a couple of historical events of note. A Mussolini rally in which she's seen in close proximity to Mussolini, and then the other one is Richard Nixon, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Big shots.
Yeah. Vince Gilliam mentioned that there were several others, but they had to cut them. He was very sad because the version that he wanted was 11 minutes too long.
Oh, that's a long cut.
I know.
It'd be so cool to see some of these work print cuts of the episodes.
I would love to. Oh my gosh, they just don't exist anymore, I bet.
They probably would not exist in film form since, the restoration of the show was pretty painstaking to bring it into HD. But they might exist on tape somewhere if they haven't been junked.
Right?
I don't know.
But who knows?
I don't know if fans have, because we've got deleted scenes on the DVDs, and I don't know, has anybody gone back in and I know the old DVDs used to have this feature where a little X would show up in the corner, and if you hit the X, it would play the deleted scene in the place in the episode it was supposed to be, which is kind of like a longer cut. But I don't think that my Blu-rays have that feature.
Isn't that sad?
It's super sad.
I'll have to look and see, because I think I want to say maybe I have both. No, I think I have the DVDs and not the Blu. Yeah. But that's something we'll have to investigate.
Okay, we'll look into it. Yes. X-Files Albuquerque. This will be the plot. But so he so Mulder's starting to put this together. But then we have Leslie, who is contemplating what he should wish for. And he lands on something that, again, like, the humor in this episode is so dark. This man just wants to see his brother again.
He just misses his bro.
Yeah.
They just would sit on the couch together and watch their shows, and he misses watching shows with his brother. He just wants him back. In Aladdin, the genie made it clear at the beginning, you can't wish anybody back from the dead because it's gross, and I don't like doing it.
Yes. So he did put that limitation on Aladdin, but Jenn is not.
No.
Is not. She's up for anything.
She tries to warn them.
Yeah.
But she's gonna do it because she's a little bit different from our genie of the lamp.
Yeah. She'll teach a lesson in that way.
So he gets Anson back, but he's not the same. And unfortunately, this moment that he wishes him back occurs at a very unfortunate moment for Scully.
The comedic timing is perfect.
It is. She's got her Harvard doctors here to observe this invisible man, this invisible body. And he has since vanished. Exactly.
And her bit about, maybe he's...
well, he's invisible.
Yeah. So obviously he's invisible, so you can't see him. Poor Scully. So close.
Almost.
Yes. Yeah. Such a great moment.
Oh, gosh.
Thankfully, he is not, he's sort of zombified, but he's not, the kind of flesh-eating zombie that... So the episode doesn't take a dark turn in that way. But he's not a pleasure to be around. And he's not saying anything. Yeah. He's kind of a drag.
It's not the same.
Yeah. And this leads to his second unfortunate wish, right? Which is super non-specific. He doesn't talk. Oh, I want him to talk. Okay.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
And this poor, resurrected man just starts screaming because he's dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would scream too. That's the only natural result of this immediate wish, that he would just scream.
Yes. Yes. And then begins to complain that he's so old. And it's so dark. It's so dark. But it's all played for comedy. It's all played for comedy, which is pretty amazing.
We appreciate it. What did you think was going to happen when you brought a corpse back from...
Right. Again, like this, Leslie, he's a simple man with simple desires. He wants to hang out with his brother, maybe sitting in a golden wheelchair.
Beavis and Butthead.
There you go. Right. And this story is a comedy, but it certainly is a tragedy. And like most classical tragedies, the fate of these characters are set before the curtain even rises.
It's almost Shakespearean.
Without a doubt, yes.
I can't feel my blood, he says. I'm cold.
I can't feel my blood. Right.
So he's trying to think of everything, and it doesn't come out the way anybody expects it to.
Right. And as I recall, I think Mulder is heading back to their place as this is occurring after the body has disappeared from the morgue, and he puts together that I think I know where the body went. I don't think someone took it. I think it might have left on its own. I think there's a moment before Souffle becomes a flambe where you see Leslie's character have this sort of epiphany about what he
gets it. He finally gets it.
He gets there. About what he could wish for.
About 0.25 seconds before it's too late, but he gets there.
Yeah,
that's
and he gets there.
Part.
And then, unfortunately, his corpse brother, who is quite cold and can't feel his blood, has been trying to light the stove in order to get some heat, and it does not end well.
No.
And I'm sure they spent a lot of their budget for the episode on this scene as well, because they blow up their domicile.
Correct. I think I want to say it was like 13 cameras, maybe.
Just to get just to make sure that they get
8 cameras. It was 8 cameras for the explosion to cover the explosion, because you can only do it once.
Absolutely.
So,
They don't have a second second home to blow up.
One of the things Vince said that he was very excited about was they tried very hard to capture the heat waves in the stove, because you've got the camera shot that's inside the stove with Anson trying to light it. And
so the audience can see.
Yes. So they burned alcohol, like rubbing out. If you burn rubbing alcohol, you can't see a flame or smoke. It doesn't smoke, but you can see the heat coming off of it.
Yeah.
So he was
cool.
like, I was very, very proud of that shot. I was like, more so than the actual explosion.
Yeah, it's easy to blow something up.
It is.
But to allude to something about to explode, that takes some craft.
And he said for the actual explosion, he was behind a barrier, safety. And he said it was a big explosion.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, I assume you said that they were on location for doing exteriors, but did they? I wonder where they shot this.
It was. I think he said, but I can't remember where. I think it was.
I'll call him.
Yeah.
I'll call him later and ask. It's fine. And then we're like heading right into the final act here, because it's so funny because this episode, like, it goes to a lot of different places, and like only now are we getting to a point where sort of the ball is in Mulder's court, and it's sort of like the monkey's paw, and like, okay, so now I've got it. I feel like I have a handle on this, but can I actually do something with it that is not going to lead to disaster?
Yeah. He gets as far as that he needs to be altruistic with his wish. He understands that it can't be for selfish reasons, but he doesn't quite get to the point where he understands exactly what the Janaya has in mind. He's got some work to do on himself, Mulder does.
I don't know. Is there a version of this episode where Mulder says, I want Samantha back?
That's the thing, though, because we've already had closure, and so he knows that she's gone. But would he have seen what happened to Anson? Like, he didn't get to see what happened to Anson. So
no, but
it
guess. Seems like he could probably guess. I don't know. Like, if he sits there and he types some incredibly long document to lay out the circumstances through which he could be with his sister again.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's a matter of, I don't know, are you turning back time? Are you, I don't know. It's just interesting, the entire crux of this character's journey has been, finding out the truth and hopefully recovering his sister.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ironic that just a couple of episodes after that storyline is wrapped up, that he gets this opportunity, like, wish for anything you want, bud. Just a thought that occurred to me when I was watching. But,
It's a good thought, and there's so many things that he could wish for.
Right. And again, like, if this story was aired in season 3 or 4, is that what this final act is about? Is it about Samantha? Just, again, like, we're close to the end here, and we've, the show has been wrapping up these things that, the alien conspiracy mythology has, a lot of it has wrapped up at this point in terms of where it was at the beginning of the series. There's the Syndicate, they've wrapped up the Samantha arc in a way that I think was really caused a lot of conflict with fans. So it makes sense that it's not part of this story, but yeah, just imagine if they had done something like this earlier in the show.
I know. It's come a long way, baby.
Yeah.
There's so much that's happened. And, we can speculate all we want, because I think it's a fun thing to speculate about.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
How would it have been different if it was Scully that unrolled the carpet and she got her wishes?
Yeah. What would Scully wish for? I don't think Scully would have even participated.
I know. She would have wished for Anson to come back so that she could show her Harvard doctors.
Just give me some time.
We learn a little bit about the Jania's history and how she came to be what she is.
Yeah, the tragic history.
I appreciate that he threw that in there because it gives her motivation and it helps us understand her character a little bit better.
Right. Absolutely.
And I like her sense of humor about it, too. She wished for a stout-hearted mule because this was 15th century France and a magical bag of turnips that would never be empty. So you never. She had some pretty smart wishes, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. It's almost like you can see the wishes leveling up. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I need this so that I can make food. Oh, maybe you can make me food. Maybe I could. Maybe I could just have the power to do anything.
Yes,
and that's where you trip.
Exactly,
and that's the problem.
Yep, therein lies the rub, so they say.
Right. There you go. Yeah, it was good to get backstory on her, and I think the actress who played the role did a really great job of imbuing the character with this kind of weariness, but at the same time, as you said, this sense of humor, but just very kind of jaded weariness.
Yeah, she was actually originally he had Janeane Garofalo in mind.
I could see that.
Yeah,
without a doubt. Yeah, I could absolutely see that.
And she was unavailable for the role, but I think Paula Sorg did a fantastic job. I think she nailed it.
But I could see it like in that Janeane Garofalo mold.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think she did a great job. She got a chance to sort of give some backstory in this scene, and it's interesting. I don't know if we've seen her deal with these nincompoops throughout the episode, and then she's dealing with Mulder, and she's kind of dealing with him the same way, and you kind of see Mulder like. Some of the shine comes off of Mulder in these scenes because you realize, like, Mulder's a smart guy and, he has all of these really great personality attributes and some not so great personality attributes. But you see some of his, sort of naivete coming through in these scenes, which I think is interesting. Anytime you take your, protagonist and kind of put him through the ringer a little bit on a personality, perspective. I like that.
Yes. And Mulder is kind of naive in a way. He's spent all this time searching for the truth,
Yeah.
To have that kind of faith that you are going to find it eventually and to keep going, I feel like you can't be too jaded.
Not like us living in the 2020s. You almost feel like this is getting a little more broader in the show, but I think there's a certain level of arrested development with Fox Mulder. This tragedy happened to his family when he was a teen, and you kind of do see that it's kind of like this young kid whose family was torn apart,
mm-hmm.
And a lot of Mulder seems like he still is that kid. He went off to school, he started this career. He's obviously very zealous and smart and educated and all this stuff, but in a lot of ways, he's still just like this little boy, like, especially when it comes to like the way that he approaches like relationship dynamics and, just kind of a lifestyle. And, Yeah, he's very juvenile in a lot of ways, unlike Scully.
Who stole cigarettes out of her mother's purse and
there you go.
As a teenager.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he wishes for peace on Earth. You would imagine, hey, that's great.
Yeah.
Peace on Earth. But it doesn't turn out how he expects.
Yeah. And if you think about it, like, honestly, I feel like that's almost the best way that she could have interpreted it without it being horrible, because, peace on Earth, well, as long as there's people on Earth, there's not going to be peace on Earth.
It's true. It's so true. Unfortunately, here we are. This is how it is.
Because there's always conflict.
Always. And as an introvert, I don't know. I might have waited for a minute to make my second wish to bring everybody back.
Yeah, but then, you go to the library because you can read whatever book you want, and then you break your glasses, and talking about the Twilight Zone episode. Which is what this reminded me of. And, absolutely.
I might have had a little bit of fun. I'm not going to lie. I would have just gone and explored a little while, but he misses Scully, so.
Yeah, and he was probably really freaked out because it's like, can I reverse this? Is this something I can undo?
Yeah.
And she didn't immediately present herself after she made the switch happen because he's wandering the streets and, doing his hello, anybody here?
Scully!
Thankfully, he is able to undo his first wish with his second wish.
I wonder how many times she had to deal with somebody having their second wish to undo their first wish.
Probably more than half. Yeah. And then it's basically, okay, so you really only have one wish because you're going to mess up the first one. Mm-hmm. I'm going to undo it because I'm nice. And then you get one more.
Mm-hmm.
If only it was 4 wishes, because then it's okay, so I can screw up twice and I can undo, and that's it. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, nothing gained, nothing lost.
Yeah.
But it's 3. Of course, it's an odd number, and it just raises the stakes.
As good drama always does.
And at this point, he, once everybody comes back, he begins his work on his document, on his...
Yes, but we get to see Skinner first. That's important. You know how much I love Skinner.
Oh, right. Okay.
He is talking to the genie who is sitting in Skinner's chair, and he's yelling at her, and because he wishes that everybody will come back, and then he continues his tirade.
Right.
And everybody comes back, and Mulder...
In the meeting,
yes,
he
Skinner
just happens
is
to be
in
standing
the middle of this bureaucratic meeting, and...
Absolutely. That genie's vindictive.
She is. She's like, well, you wished for it. I just gave you what you wanted.
Right.
Everybody's back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so he goes downstairs, and Scully is there, right? And he's trying to work on this wish, like you said, craft the perfectly legal wish.
Right. Where there's no loopholes, no language that can be misinterpreted or construed in a negative fashion. Scully have this heart-to-heart, which, again, it's just this is the heart of the show.
Scully's got it figured out.
Yeah, you got it. Absolutely. And, and this is a great scene. And, I think this is a scene that really elevates the episode. Yes, it's a Monster of the Week episode, but it's got a lot of heart as well. It's got a lot of humor, but it's got a lot of heart, and it's a great combination.
Right.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it is. And I appreciate also his directorial tricks in which he pans the camera certain ways in certain directions, and it looks like she just vanishes. She obviously just walks away. But, it's good. It's fun. It adds that little element of, humor to it and fun aspect. But I do love what Scully says about, maybe that's the point of all of this, is that we have to, do better, and we have to have these conflicts in our lives in order to be better as humans. And I love that she acknowledges that, and, because it's Scully. She's immortal, so it doesn't matter. She's got all the chances she needs.
Got it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would not be her wish.
No.
Immortality.
No.
The genie would be very confused.
It's like, well, I've already got immortality. So.
Are you wishing not to be immortal? I don't understand what you're saying here. And so ultimately, Mulder does not present his document to the genie. He goes in a different direction.
Yeah.
He puts on a VHS of Aladdin, watches the last few minutes. You know what? This Aladdin guy, he knew what he was doing with his third wish. Someday, decades later, Disney will own this intellectual property.
It all comes back around.
A lot of foreshadowing in this episode. Yeah, a lot of foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Then we get, I love this scene so much. It's just the best. In the apartment.
The capper scene. Yes.
With the
absolutely.
beers.
Yes, with the beers.
Caddyshack.
Yes, absolutely. Which has played such a pivotal role in the entire series, the film Caddyshack.
Yeah.
It's such a sweet scene.
It is. Popcorn and beer together. Mulder and Scully are happy. They're on the couch.
Yes.
You know.
I don't know. Has anyone cut a YouTube video together with music playing in the background where it's juxtaposing this scene with their first meeting?
1,000% probably, yes.
Okay, yeah, sure.
There's gotta be. I wouldn't doubt it. Some Sarah McLachlan playing in the background.
Absolutely. Maybe not the Angels. I don't know. That's the thing of sad puppies.
But you spend all your time waiting.
That's true. You're right. That's true. It could be the Dawson's Creek theme song. I don't want to wait. That could be good. Something of the time.
Paula Cole.
There you go.
For the win.
Cole.
Yeah.
You've got it. Yeah, it's a nice scene. And again, like there's like this weird, I don't know, it's almost like it's a acknowledgement to the audience where it's like kind of saying goodbye to the show in a significant way here. And we might not be coming back or we might not be coming back in the form that we've been in for the last 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this episode, it if it's saying goodbye to the sort of Mulder Scully Monster of the Week format, then Requiem really goes out of it. I mean, Requiem feels so much like a series finale.
It does.
In the way that it retreads the pilot episode.
It does, yeah.
I don't know if you've discussed Requiem yet or if that's next on the docket, but it's interesting to see these two episodes as sort of like a pair of sort of like signing off on the show as it was from these two different perspectives, the Monster of the Week and the mythology, because they really are, they're very fitting.
It's true because it does feel like its own ending. And Mulder's, he's mentioning that he didn't make the world a happier place, but Scully says, well, you made me, I'm happy, She didn't say you made me happy, but she says I'm happy, and that counts for something. So, I mean, it's implied that he's making her happy.
So what happens after it fades to black?
I'm sure there's like a gajillion fanfics about that.
There's a whole internet just for that.
Yeah.
It's, I say all this like this is really the last time Mulder and Scully, but it is interesting to think about this in the context of the revival as well, because it's, the revival is in many ways trying to get back to this. Mm-hmm. The world of the X-Files as it was in this episode, where you have these two characters that have a lot of history together and know each other very well, and are really just going out there and investigating paranormal phenomenon. And, the revival, I think most fans would acknowledge, is pretty hit or miss when it comes to hitting those notes. But I think some of the episodes are able to recapture a lot of that magic.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at an episode like this, and it's like, this is what they wanted. This is what they
really, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we should head over to the mailbag and see what some of our listeners in the XCast basement had to say about the episode.
Let's head on over.
Alrighty. Natalie says, I'm surprised he wished for world peace, he being Mulder, instead of knowing and exposing the truth. Wishing for Scully's fertility to return would have been a waste since she's already pregnant, but he didn't know that, so,
True.
However, if we didn't hear his last wish and we weren't shown the genie being free, this could have been a nice fan theory. So, yeah, I agree. It could have been a nice
fan cut.
Fan cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. Liam says Vince tipping his hand into potentially one of the most overtly fantastical genre pieces the show had yet seen to that point. In many ways, this serves as a natural conclusion to a great deal of the 7th season's narrative threads. Perhaps faced with the production realities of the series' potential conclusion, the narrative family allows our characters to stretch beyond the constraints of the procedural format into something approaching a serialized nature. Whilst the 8th season would contain many surprises and departures from the show we once knew, it is arguable that the template was set herein. The sense of unity at the conclusion, the knowledge that in some oblique manner the wish of both has been fulfilled, they have conquered their demons and won, realize their one true wish as a partnership and can settle back and allow the world to wash over them. Whilst not the most creepy or memorable of all the X-Files episodes, Souhaite allows Vince Gilligan the opportunity to reflect on an era of the show that was about to pass quietly into that good night. Packed with memorable scenes, the invisible autopsy. It is simultaneously an elegy to what has gone before and a template for the future. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to watch Caddyshack again.
Very insightful. I think it's interesting, the idea of this episode serving as somewhat of a template for things to come in terms of the serialized nature of the show, which the show has always had a serialized factor more than a lot of other dramas of the era. But yeah, season 8 feels a lot more serialized than before, out of necessity, because they've got to explain Mulder's absence throughout half of those episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And that must have been tough because, you have casual viewers tuning into the show that might not have caught the opener or, other intervening episodes. And it's like, why is T-1000? Like, where's Agent Mulder? And so they kind of had to toe that line. They almost had to be serialized in order to not be serialized, because they had to continually explain to the audience, like, hey, Mulder's been abducted. Here's Mulder on the ship for a brief moment, or here's us talking about Mulder not being around. And then you get into like the last third of the season. It is really, it's more of a modern formula.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, talking about breaking the constraints of the formula in this episode, I guess you could see that the end of the episode being that, where it sort of acknowledges what's come before. Yeah, that's a great take.
It is, yeah. Jessica says, I enjoy watching this episode. The barely contained exuberance of both Mulder and Scully, that is the hallmark of late season 7, is fun to watch, if not entirely in character. Jen's snark is funny, and I love how Mulder's supposedly altruistic wish for world peace is shown up to be egotistical and simplistic. Changing human hearts isn't easy. Anyone else seeing some Breaking Bad foreshadowing in both shot choice, like the overhead shot of the van in the teaser and Jen's styling. So yeah. A few foreshadowings of Breaking Bad there too.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just so fun to think that this was, his first directing gig on the show.
Yes.
And then you're already seeing sort of his hallmark style being born in this episode. Pretty cool. Beyond all of his writing flair that he can do all.
I agree. This guy named AJ.
AJ? What kind of name is that?
He says, it's an absolute joy of an episode for me. It's as throwaway and light as they come. Indeed, it would fit nicely in the self-mocking frippery of Season 6's first half, but this is chock full of great moments. Scully and the invisible body, the entire final act, and pretty much every scene that Paula Sorg steals. It's the last truly normal, that's in quotes, normal Mulder and Scully case of the original era of the show, and in retrospect, Looking at it now, there is a comfort and warmth about it that we never really get back again. I cherish it. I agree. That's why it's in my top 10. Right
comfort
there.
And warmth.
It's a comfort episode. It's like mashed potatoes and gravy and,
Well, I hate comfortable things. That's why I sleep on a concrete slab. I don't like watchability. I'm not a fan of that. I like to force myself to watch things, which is why it's not in my top 10.
Ellie says, considering what's about to happen, it's so lovely to see Mulder and Scully enjoying the best parts of the X-Files. I love seeing their joy in the case and their friendship, or more, at the end. They are fairly happy, more quotes, which is basically Scully speak for, I'm very happy in my job and my partnership, and I really like spending time outside of work with you, Mulder, my best friend and baby daddy. I love that we get this episode before Requiem and the rest of the season run. They love their work, they love each other, and they're happy. Yes.
And nothing will ever change.
Yes.
I hear I'm just talking about all this, and this is sort of like the penultimate episode of the show as it was, and everybody's sort of having that feeling, and it's just like, if the X-Files ends at the end of this season, like if that was, if the last words we hear from the X-Files are "I'm pregnant," is that so bad?
No comment.
Sarah has collapsed. Because ultimately, that's what we get. That's how the show ends anyway.
Yes.
With an admission of pregnancy. It ends the exact same way.
Oh, JJ. Okay, I have so many thoughts. It's fine. We're all fine
It's
here.
just ironic. You could end the show at the end of 7 seasons, 7 very strong seasons, and they end it the same way anyway. It's a bit mad.
Because why not?
Yeah.
Okay. Adam says, some fun moments like Scully's exuberance over the invisible body, but I agree that it has too much of the silly comedy we started seeing in season 6 and 7. Not just in tone, but you couldn't get farther from the more grounded, extreme possibilities of the early seasons to having a genie who can literally make the world disappear with magic. Just not what I would watch The X-Files for, and a clear signal the show could not continue past this point without change. I think it's interesting that he brings back the extreme possibilities of the early seasons.
I don't have an issue with the idea of a genie being on the X-Files, because I think these are just like different brands of fantasy. And the agents deal with a lot of circumstances that, some hard science fiction in the show, but I think you'd be hard pressed to say that the entirety of the show is very science based in some of the situations they get themselves in. And certainly this is one that is very much like, we're not even interested in trying to analyze the science of what's going on here, because we are chalking it up to magic.
Well, we've got other magical episodes like Die Hand der Verletzt.
Absolutely. Talking about witchcraft, which there are a lot of episodes that involve, the idea of witchcraft.
Is astrology, but basically magic.
Yeah, if we want to bring this into more spirituality and religious connotations, which again aren't connected necessarily to science. Yeah, absolutely. All Souls and Revelations and Miracle Man. There's a lot of episodes that deal with that as well. So I think they're just different flavors of something that the X-Files has been doing since the start. I think that when you look at seasons 6 and 7, there's certainly a change in the tone. And I chalk a lot of that up to the move in production to Los Angeles. I think that you can't move a show to a new location and not have a change in tone. But certainly that doesn't account necessarily for writing. I think that this just goes to show how different the X-Files was, in that, if this show would have aired maybe 10 years earlier, these agents would have stayed exactly the same from episode to episode. And so I don't necessarily see them acting differently in these seasons as an issue or even as inconsistent. I see these characters growing, getting older, becoming more comfortable with each other, sort of, you go through the things that they go through, and yeah, you might have somewhat of a lighter look at your life, and the things that are happening around you. And I think if you see that as a negative, then I think you're sort of discrediting what makes the show so good, is that these characters can change. And I know desperately we want things to stay the same, especially things that we love, but sometimes staying the same makes things, bad if not worse. And there are plenty of shows that couldn't find a way to adjust their tone or their formula, and that has been their doom. And I give the X-Files credit for trying to do different things after 5 years, and maybe not all of them were the best received, but I prefer trying to sort of blaze a new path than just, becoming stagnant.
Oh, yeah.
And fading away.
That makes sense. I mean, that's a great way to look at it. And we've got Andrew, who says, this is our last comment. Andrew says, while Je Souhaite is easily the best comedy episode of season 7, it comes after a string of subpar comedic episodes, meaning the fun of it falls flat somewhat when it doesn't deserve to. The idea is a good one. Mulder and Scully stumble upon a genie who then grants the former 3 wishes. Mulder wishing for world peace and it going wrong has some comedic merit. However, in a season when he learns about his sister's death after a lifelong search, I can't help but wonder why he doesn't ask to bring her back to life, like you said, JJ. And then the realization that he has to let her go. This would have been a powerful coda to the Samantha arc, showing as Mulder has accepted she has passed on rather than the existing uncertainty of how he feels. Nonetheless, there is a lot of good in Je Souhaite. The I Dream of Jeannie song, the dumbass antics of Anson and Leslie, Scully's joy at painting the invisible Anson, and her abrupt dismay at him not being there in the later scene. Mulder and Scully coming together for a final beer, and Mulder's unselfish wish to free the genie. A great feel-good end to a subpar season. 7 out of 10. What are your thoughts on the Mulder accepting Samantha's fate? Do you feel like he has accepted it at this point and is moving on?
I unapologetically love closure. I love that episode, and I think that the final moments of that episode in the field, like, they bring me to tears every time I watch it. And I think we see acceptance in that moment. For me, again, yeah, we have gotten used to this guy's struggle throughout the show, and Samantha being such a central part of that. And I think it's hard for us as fans, viewers, to let that go. But if your protagonist is able to let it go, we don't have to keep going back to it. We don't have to keep reminding, ourselves and, forcing ththese characters to sort of present their trauma. Because in the real world, like, you don't do that. Like, that doesn't ring true to me. So I think that at this point, the show has decided, that story arc has come to an end. And again, like, I know that there are a lot of people that are not fans of that episode closure, that they wanted there to be more of a, denouement. And I think that the show has been very clear that it's not really interested in typical resolutions. And so it felt perfect to me. It felt perfect to me when it aired. It felt perfect to me every time I've watched it since. And I don't think that the show does itself any favors by trying to bring that up again and again. And it really has avoided doing that. It gave the, what the show did later on in this version of it, and then in the revival series, is that it gave the Mulder and Scully a unified tragedy through William. It gave them a new mission. It gave them, a new truth to uncover. And I just think that's where the show goes. I think that at this point, you have closure, and then you have ex-cops. So the show is clearly trying to say, hey, here's something new. Like, so that's my take. I just think that I think that he has resolved it in his mind. I think that I mean, there's a reason the episode's called Closure.
Yeah, I had never actually considered that point about William, that he is their shared tragedy. And up until this very moment, I have not enjoyed any aspect about the William storyline at all. Dislike strongly all of it, every single bit of it. But putting it in that frame, I can potentially appreciate it slightly.
And you know what? And I get why you feel that way. And and it's not that I am like love the William story arc.
Yeah.
I think I think you have a story that was presented in a very strange way, because you have a ninth season of this show, which is, save for the finale, completely absent of one of the protagonists. And, you have Scully sort of on her own through that season and realizing all of these things about her child and having to make this terrible decision for his own good. And, as we reconnect with Mulder and Scully, in I Want to Believe, and then in the revival series, the story is presented in these very, like, sort of fragmented ways. And it's not framed as much as I think it could be that, this is something that Mulder and Scully are trying to do together. I think we kind of get there in episodes, certainly like Ghoulie. Frankly, I think one of the strongest episodes that deal with this is an episode that William is not in. It's Founder's Mutation from season 10, where you see them unified together. They're having these heart-to-heart discussions. They're talking about these hard things. And for me, that's the template in Founder's Mutation that the show could have continued in if they wanted to sort of take this and develop it over a long period of time. But they also didn't have a lot of episodes to work with. There was a lot of pressure to do one-off episodes because I think they wanted to try to recreate the format that the show was once in, regardless of the format that shows are in today. And I think it was just kind of like a little bit of an identity crisis for what the show was supposed to be. But I mean, that's my take, like, from a writing perspective. Like, if you want to give these characters a new journey, that's it. But I feel like some of the writing was tentative as to how much they wanted to embrace that, and the characters doing it together. Yeah, to say nothing of, like, I'm sorry, go.
No, it's fine. I was very excited about Founder's Mutation because it seemed like a really cool direction to go in, and like this whole new thing. But like you said, it doesn't make sense to start a whole new thing when you don't know how many episodes you're going to get. I get it, and I understand it, but it makes me sad because it could have been really, really fun and really cool if they had, broken off into this whole thing. But that was a lot to start.
Yeah, and you do a 6-episode limited series. You end it on a cliffhanger, and then the first thing you do when you get a new order is that you undo the cliffhanger. So it was going in a lot of different directions. Is what I would say. And I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. The revival. It's I love a lot of things about it, and there's a lot of head scratchers in there for me.
So, any final thoughts on Je Souhaite?
I would say the Flambe episode. This is a great episode, and I think that your adoration for it has raised my esteem for it through this conversation.
So are we up to a 7.9 yet? 7, 8?
We'll see.
Are we up
yeah,
to
let's
8?
say 7.99 repeating.
99999.
We'll do that.
Okay.
And again, like, I think that some of the the things I talked about holding me back a little bit, but it's a great episode, and it comes at a really great time, and I do think it's a standout of season 7, and it just works, and it does kind of make you a little sad because it's never the same. I
know, it's bittersweet symphony.
Yes. The bittersweet symphony. Another perfect song for the era.
Yes.
We should cut the video to that of Mulder and Scully on the couch, and then
get on that, JJ.
Okay, yes, I will drop everything. Start my YouTube channel of Mulder and Scully relationship fan edits.
Just get stuff from other movies and just stick their heads on.
I'll do. Yes, okay.
Just stick their heads on other people's bodies.
Greetings you could send. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just put
very badly Photoshop edits.
I could do that. Videos. Everything will be in slow motion. Every video will be at least an hour long.
With a lot of filtering going on with the magical.
Yes.
Colored
There's going to be a lot of sepia tone. Mm-hmm. I'm going to use special iMovie effects for no reason. Trying to play with the format.
I can't wait for this channel.
It's going to be great. Launching in 2023 to tie into the 30th anniversary.
We'll promote it when you come back for season 8.
Yes. It'll premiere with X-Files Albuquerque. So as soon as that show premieres, I'll be launching the YouTube channel. So stay tuned.
Sounds great. All right. What else have you got going on that you would like to shout out about?
I'm in kind of a weird place with the X-Files stuff right now. Yeah. Because I've been doing the official artwork through my publisher at Acme Archives, but unfortunately they no longer have the license to do official art for Fox properties or the former Fox properties. We'll see what happens down the line, is what I would say. Yeah. But as for now, I'm still, working with a lot of other properties in terms of official prints I've got. I haven't announced it yet, but I've got some more Mandalorian prints debuting next week, which is exciting. Now I'm doing some more stuff with Marvel, which is cool. And and I'm just, I'm going to keep the eye on the X-Files and see if there's some way that I can do some more work similar to what I've been doing with the episode prints. So we'll see.
And your Patreon too, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll do some X-Files stuff on Patreon. Like a lot of my wonderful patrons are big X-Files fans, so I tend to do a lot of X-Files related stuff. So if you're interested, patreon.com/JJLendl, JJLENDL. Check that out. I have a lot of tiers that have different rewards, some digital, some physical. There are tiers where you can get postcards in the mail every month, and a lot of those are X-Files themed. And it's fun. It's a cool place to sort of share extra thoughts about some of the projects that I've worked on. So I'll do some behind the posts. So check it out.
Awesome. And you can find the Xcast on Twitter at the X_cast. You can find us on Facebook at the X-Files Basement, the Xcast Podcast Fan Group, and on Instagram at the Xcast Pod. You can find me, Sarah Blair, on Twitter at Sarah L. Blair and on Instagram at author.sarah.blair. And I've got my new book out, Air in Darkness. It's the 3rd book in my Tides of Giants series. It is out and available. So that is very, very exciting.
That's great. I just want to be clear, that was me clapping. That wasn't me running away. The sound. New book!
Applause. I had put up the sign. You can't see it because it's a podcast, but I put up the applause sign and blinked it. Genie
she was
style.
very clear before we started recording. She said, when that applause sign come up, I want you to clap as loud as you can, or I will cut the speed. Yes, ma'am. So sorry. I'm so happy for you with it because you've been killing it. Because I know that you had the original novel, and then you did the prequel novel, and now this is book. I guess technically book 3, yes. But book 2.
Book 2 sequel.
Yeah.
Book 3. It's very confusing. I was not planning it. Clearly, I was pantsing this whole series. But I'm gonna have.
But listen, you got it. I think I saw the spines of the books. It's very clear how they should go on the shelf. What else can you ask for?
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Congratulations! That's so great.
Yep. So I've got one more book in this series, and the series is gonna be complete.
Yes, that's great. And I'm sure you're almost done with it, right?
Yeah. All right, friends. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Xcast. It's been real. And until next time, please always remember, trust no one.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast.
So you know how you were both talking about the attractive women and how you spotted a particular one that you liked, etc., etc. Would you like to know what I put in my notes?
Go on then.
Yeah.
Love the Cuban heels.
They're very nice heels, and the fact he mentions in the behind the scenes later on there, was it a size too small?
Yes.
Yeah.
That
totally worth it for Cuban heels. For me,
Yeah.
I'm 6'1", which is ever so slightly above average. If I get a pair of Cubans, I'm 6'3", and I look like a god.
Yeah.
I love Cuban heels.
Pick a disc.
The Steps formula at that time was player things. If there's another verse, the fail get it. If they want a little bridge or something like that, they might give it to H or Lisa possibly. But all the hook and everything else would have been played.
Yeah, exactly. I think, well, I noticed as well, I think Lisa has a lot more kind of solo stuff or solo verses in this album, I think, from what I remember. As well. So the balance is slowly getting more into things. I mean, but it's something that usually happens in all kind of girl/boy groups.
Frame to frame.
My first trip to the cinema to see a Bond film was Dying the Other Day.
The first one I saw in the cinema was The World Is Not Enough. I tried to get into Tomorrow Never Dies. I was just too young, and we got rumbled in the queue, and I was absolutely devastated. She went, "Oh, are you 12 years old?" There was a woman in the queue. I thought, I can't remember if it was the woman behind the box office or not. She basically did like a kind of MI6 job on me and scammed me, and thought, you're not getting in.
It doesn't sound like it took a lot of interrogation. There was no one
exactly,
holding a rope with knots in it to you.
Exactly. We know how long I'd last in the field.
Are you 12 years old? No. Yes, I am. It's like the stoning in Life of Brian.
He said, "I'm sorry, I thought we'd started."
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network. The Xcast and X-Files podcast was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the Xcast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter at wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.